welcome to the BusinessWings podcast. I'm Adam Bannister, and today I'm talking to Lee McQueen about his experience winning the Apprentice in 2008. Predictably, I want to talk about the Apprentice. How useful would you say it was, particularly winning it as a springboard to starting a business, in terms of obviously the contact of Alan Sugar and also maybe getting financial support because people recognise your name and such like?
It was absolutely a necessity, in my opinion. I cannot underline how important it was and how much I learned from working with Lord Sugar for the last 2 years. I went in at a time when Lord Sugar and his son Simon were setting up a business called McQueen. All they had at the time was an idea. They had no marketing, they had no engineers, they had no product, they had no services, nothing. I walked in as development director and helped build that business with them. We've gone from a standing start to over 650 petrol stations. So without giving you all the gump, all of what we achieved in such a short space of time was absolutely brilliant. And it just, I suppose, had a knock-on effect. The ball continued to roll from the Apprentice. When you're immersed in them tasks, it gives you that confidence and that belief to say, you know what, I can hone in and use my talent. You can actually start a business and start making money if you put your mind to it. I worked in a corporate organisation for 6.5 years. And when I left my business unit, turned over £32 million. I had 30 staff working me, 22 which were revenue generating. I had a really good job. But what my company wasn't giving to me was that exposure to how to launch my own company. And that's exactly what Lord Sugar's company gave me, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
What would you reckon about the people that bow out of the Apprentice quite early? The typical viewer would probably forget or not be aware of the fact they've already beaten thousands of people to get there in the first place. Do you think that could be counterproductive, or do you think those people still sort of benefit from the experience?
I think they benefit from the experience, but I also think that when they look back on it, they probably, I'm not saying that they regret, because who am I to say that anybody else would regret? Now, for example, this year, Dan, for example, who went out week one, in my opinion, Dan's ego put him up for project manager. It got in the way of the actual rational business thinking. And because he banged the desk, he's like, yeah, look at me, I'll be project manager. And he got it wrong. My point being on that is I think that people that go out early on probably look at that as the experience and realise, shit, you know what, I need to change certain things. I need to use it as a learning experience. And I think that if they do use it as a learning experience, then obviously they benefit from it. And it's the people that come into the Apprentice are completely deluded, thinking that the best way to win is to stop backstabbing people and having bitchy conversations. You know, unbelievable. And you get it year on year on year, and it's not really until it's not really until week 6, week 7 you start really. That's the thing. It never ceases to amaze me, Adam, that the amount of people that come into the Apprentice and they still want to bitch and backstab. It's just not the way to win. Do you know what I mean? The way to
it's
win.
Almost as if they've not seen previous series where doing that has made them look really bad and it's actually got them nowhere, sort of thing.
I know,
but I mean, that's the way it comes across anyway.
Exactly. You've got to learn from other people's mistakes, but equally you've got to learn from yourself.
Sort of on the same topic, in terms of it, some people look petty or egotistical. Do you think that how it's edited really amplifies that, maybe sometimes to a really unfair degree? I mean, I don't know whether you actually watched any of the highlights. If you did, when you watched back, did any of the people get misrepresented, do you think?
Yeah, I'm just for the record, I watched all of it. Of course I did, you know, it's TV debut. But yeah,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly, we only get to watch it when you guys, as the public, effectively get to watch it. Look, yes, it's a TV programme, and yes, they edit and whatever, but I have to say, they can't edit you saying something that you didn't say. They can't put words into your mouth. So people do come out and say the things that they do. Yes, I did the reverse pterodactyl. Yes, I fibbed on my CV. I can't comment on the other people's mistakes. But look at Claire, who's a very good friend of mine now. She was in the boardroom. She could have got five times in my series. I mean, she could have easily got 5, but she learned from it throughout the process. So that was progression. I think that when you're sitting in front of somebody one-to-one and you're having a glass of wine after everything's under the table and the whole series is finished and whatever, people are going to be slightly different. You're in a very, very high-pressure environment. You get hardly any sleep. Everyone's under pressure. Everyone wants to do well. No one wants to mess up in front of Lord Sugar. And people respond to pressure in different ways. And sometimes they do well and sometimes they don't. And if they don't do well, one of them will get fired, as Lord Sugar would say. I mean, I'm not a production TV expert, but there's certain areas that I'm sure that they merge together and make it a little bit more spicy. But ultimately, what you see is what you get.
Fair play. Can't argue with that. And presumably that whole persona on The Apprentice, you know, Alan Sugar, the impatient, gruff kind of, irritated easily by the contestants, that's incredibly hammed up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say different. To work for Lord Sugar is an absolute pleasure. Yeah, he's firm, but he's fair. If you do something wrong, he'll tell you about it, but if you do something right, he'll tell you about it. He's very, very clever, but has a huge amount of attention to detail. A lot of people think that the Apprentice winners, they go there and then they leave. No, they don't. We stick around, we learn from him. He gives us the opportunity to learn and allows us to kind of set our own business up. If you look at everybody that's left him, they've all gone on to set their own companies up. So it's not as if they're leaving him for any other reason than that. It's the nature of the beast. And a lot of people think that you go and work for him and you just get stuck in a broom cupboard somewhere. It's total rubbish. I probably saw Lord Sugar once or twice a week.
And what do you think you won it? What do you think your qualities were that elevated you above the rest?
Well, put it this way, I had the best record. I won 3 times as project manager. I won more tasks than anyone else. I only lost 3 tasks, which was less than anyone else. And I never went into the final 3 of the boardroom. My record spoke for itself. But to kind of strip a layer back off that, the reason why I won is because I built really good relationships with people, planned and prepared for, I suppose, my time in the Apprentice for every single task as much as you could, made sure that I had a structure and a strategy around that. I worked hard, worked well as a team, and I delivered, and I bring the best out of people, and that's what I want.